Something tragic unfolded at the royal ball. Juvelian's teary eyes reflected her shock as her father's cold gaze pierced her, sending shivers down her spine. He dragged her through the court with an iron grip. "Father, I swear it wasn't me! Please," she pleaded, her voice trembling. He offered no response, his focus fixed ahead. Moments earlier, chaos erupted with a piercing shout. "The princess has collapsed! Poison!" The drink was poisoned. The court fell into stunned silence as a man held up the princess's cup, confirming the horror. Juvelian stood frozen as the young man, Mikhail, cradled the unconscious princess. His anguished voice broke through the murmurs. "Juvelian! Was it jealousy? Did you really try to kill the princess?" "No, it wasn't me. Please believe me," she cried, but Mikhail's accusing glare remained unwavering. "Enough lies. Was it because I chose her over you?" His words struck her like a blade, and whispers from the nobles surrounded her. "So it's true. Lady Juvelian would stoop this low," someone muttered. Another chimed in. "She's been bitter since her breakup with Marquis Hessen's son." "It makes sense." Juvelian trembled, struggling to defend herself. "I hated her for taking him away, but I never wanted her to die," she thought desperately. Then her father appeared, his presence silencing the court. The king's thunderous voice echoed from above. "Lock her in the dungeons immediately!" "Father, you trust me, don't you?" Juvelian whispered, clinging to him in desperation. He slapped her hand away, his expression colder than ice. "Allow me, your majesty," he said with a bow. "Perhaps the Chamber of Shadows would suffice." Gasps filled the court. Juvelian's body froze. The Chamber of Shadows, a place of no escape, reserved for traitors. "He's giving up on me," she thought, her heart breaking. Dragged along, memories of her father's coldness resurfaced. As a child, she once entered his study with hopeful eyes. "What are you doing here?" he asked, barely looking up. "I missed you," she said softly. "Don't waste my time with such trivialities," he replied sharply, leaving her in tears. Now at the prison, he placed a dagger in her hand. "Use this," he said coldly before leaving her behind. Juvelian stared at the blade, her despair consuming her. Outside, murmurs reached her ears. "Your Highness, you can't!" "The Crown Prince?" she thought, her fear escalating. The prince, his fiery red eyes filled with fury, approached her cell. "Step aside," he ordered. When he entered, Juvelian raised the dagger with trembling hands. "I won't let you torture me," she whispered to herself. "Stop," the prince commanded, his voice alarmed. But Juvelian thrust the blade into herself, a bitter smile gracing her lips. As her vision blurred, she laughed softly, her final thought haunting her. "All I ever wanted was to be loved." Suddenly, she woke up. Tea was in her hand, and sunlight poured through the windows. Across from her sat Mikhail, his voice breaking her daze. "Was there something you wanted to tell me?" She gazed at him, her heart steeling with determination. "You're 3 hours late," she said coldly. "Is that why you called me here?" he asked, irritation flickering across his face. "No," she replied. "I wanted to break up." In this second chance at life, Juvelian vowed to abandon the girl who died yearning for love. This time, she would become the villainess everyone feared. Mikhail's brows furrowed briefly, but he quickly masked his reaction, letting out a dry laugh. "Ridiculous. You expect me to believe that?" he asked, his tone laced with disbelief. Juvelian wasn't surprised by his reaction. Mikhail Albert Hessen, the protagonist of this story and the man she once loved, was accustomed to her desperate behavior. In her past life, Juvelian had been an ordinary girl before dying in a car accident and being reborn as the villainess of a novel she once read. She regained her memories 2 years into this life, just 4 days before this encounter. In the original story, Juvelian was obsessive, harassing anyone who approached Mikhail, the first person to show her kindness amid her father's neglect. But now, having learned the tragic outcome of her actions, she resolved to change. "I'm serious. I want to let you go," she said softly, her voice calm. She sipped her tea and added silently, "I have to avoid that death flag." Mikhail folded his arms, his gaze scrutinizing her. "Don't believe me if you don't want to, but I've made myself clear. I want to break up," she said firmly. After a tense pause, he finally spoke. "Fine, I'll believe you. But don't ever show your face to me again," he said, slamming his hand on the table. As she walked away, her lips curved into a faint smirk. Was this breakup a success? She thought. "I'm sorry for everything I did. I hope you find happiness," she said, stunning him before leaving. This has to be an act, Mikhail thought, frowning. Yet an unsettling feeling lingered in his chest as he watched her disappear. At the Floyan Manor, Juvelian sighed in relief. Finally, that's done. Time to get some rest, she thought, climbing the stairs. Suddenly, her father appeared, descending from the opposite side. Her body froze. Father. Duke Legis Adre Floyan, the Empire's only swordmaster, was an imposing man whose youthful appearance defied his years. Juvelian knew him as a father who would never love her, the man who would ultimately cause her death in the original story. Welcome home, father, she said with a faint smile, masking her unease. I've given up on his love. Now I'll focus on living peacefully while securing his wealth. You must be tired from training all day, she added. He stared at her silently, his face unreadable. Awkward as ever, Juvelian thought. Please rest. I'll take my leave, she said hurriedly, retreating. There was no training today. His voice suddenly broke the silence. She paused mid-step, glancing back in surprise. He's speaking to me? You're home early, he added. Well, actually, we broke up, she replied nonchalantly, trying to keep her voice steady. His gaze sharpened. Why? He asked, stepping closer. Her body tensed. Ah, that's right. Mikhail is his trusted subordinate. Mikhail doesn't love me. I don't want to marry someone who doesn't care for me, she said, turning her face away. I want to marry someone who will love me. I want to be happy. His piercing gaze softened briefly before he turned to leave without a word. He's done with his foolish daughter, she thought bitterly, watching him walk away. Later that evening, a maid approached Juvelian's room, trembling. Lady Juvelian must be furious after breaking up with Sir Mikhail. The room is probably in shambles, the maid thought nervously. She knocked gently. My lady, your bath is ready, she called out as she stepped inside. She froze at the sight of Juvelian, seated quietly on her bed, tears streaming down her face. My lady, the maid exclaimed, horrified. Juvelian quickly wiped her tears. I'm fine, Marilyn. I'm just a little tired. I'll take a bath tomorrow. Marilyn's heart ached as she watched her mistress's forced smile. Please rest, my lady, she said softly, bowing before leaving the room. Outside, Marilyn sniffled, wiping her eyes. She's heartbroken. Poor Lady Juvelian, she murmured, holding back tears. From the shadows, Duke Legis stepped forward, his expression grim. She cried? He asked sharply. Tell me everything you saw. The next morning, Juvelian woke up feeling refreshed. Ah, today's going to be a good day, she thought as she stretched leisurely. Good morning, my lady. The Duke has summoned you to join him for breakfast, Marilyn said softly as she entered the room. Juvelian froze. Breakfast with father? That's unusual. A short while later, she sat across from her father at the dining table, quietly eating. He never eats with me? Why now? She thought, glancing at him warily. Her tension grew under his piercing gaze. Eat, he said curtly, placing more steak on her plate. Why is he doing this to me? She thought, forcing herself to take a bite as he watched her intently. The previous night, Duke Legis had summoned Marilyn. Why was Juvelian crying? He had asked. It seems the breakup with Sir Hessen was difficult for her, the maid had replied, her voice tinged with concern. Now, at breakfast, the Duke sighed deeply, drawing Juvelian's attention. He must think I'm pathetic, she thought bitterly, sneaking a glance at him. Her father was everything she wasn't, the Empire's greatest hero, a duke, commander of the Central Army, and the leader of the Imperial Knights. He had secured victory in the war 20 years ago, cementing his status as a legend. Meanwhile, Juvelian was a social outcast, mocked by the nobility. We're worlds apart, she thought. Juvelian, her father said suddenly, breaking the silence. Yes, she responded cautiously. What do you look for in a man? He asked, dabbing his mouth with a handkerchief. Her knife slipped from her hand in surprise. Why are you asking me that all of a sudden? She asked, trying to mask her nervousness. I'm curious, he replied evenly. Curious? You've never cared before? Why now? She wondered, her mind racing. Is he trying to find a replacement for Mikhail? With a forced laugh, she said, Someone stronger than you, maybe? She knew it was a joke. No one was stronger than her father. Are you serious? He asked, his sharp gaze making her flinch. Oh no, did he see through me? She thought. Well, someone like that doesn't exist, right? Since you're the strongest in the Empire, she added, forcing a bright smile. Her mind scrambled for a convincing response. Father, for me, it's money, honor, family, looks, and abilities. If a man doesn't have all these at the highest level, I don't want to marry him, she declared, hoping to satisfy him. I see, he said after a long pause, his expression unreadable. Did it work? She wondered, exhaling quietly. Juvelian, he said again. Yes? She asked nervously. Let's go on an outing together, he said, startling her. Why? She asked, sitting upright. No reason, he replied, sipping his drink. An outing? We've never done that in all 18 years of my life, she thought, bewildered. Later, they strolled through the bustling streets, vendors calling out to passers-by. Duke Legis was on a buying spree, purchasing anything that caught his eye. This one. That one. All of those, he instructed, pointing at various items. Why is he acting like this? Juvelian thought, baffled. She picked up a plush bunny adorned with jewelry, admiring its craftsmanship. Who would even buy something this extravagant? That one too, her father said, pointing to the bunny in her hands. She flinched. Why is he buying everything I look at? As they exited the shop, Juvelian sighed. I just want to go home and rest, she thought. Suddenly, a hooded figure brushed past her, carrying a sword. Wait, a female swordsman? She thought, glancing at the figure as she approached her father. Wait here, the Duke said, stepping aside to speak with the woman. Do they know each other? Juvelian wondered. Ever since Lady Yulia disappeared, I thought all female swordsmen were gone. As whispers from onlookers reached her, she grew self-conscious. Isn't that Duke Floyan? That must be his infamous daughter, someone said, laughing. I need to get away from these stairs, she thought, clutching her umbrella tightly. She ducked into a nearby shop, hoping to escape the attention. Welcome. What brings an angel like yourself to my humble store? The shopkeeper greeted her enthusiastically. I didn't even check where I was going, she thought, turning red. Please, take your time. What would you like to buy? The shopkeeper persisted. I'm not here to buy anything, she thought, flustered. Before she could respond, a hooded knight entered the shop, his imposing figure drawing attention. He walked to the counter, standing behind Juvelian. How much for this? He asked, pointing to an item. Juvelian glanced up at him, noting his striking red eyes. Red eyes? She thought, startled. He caught her staring, and she quickly looked away. What are you looking at? Piss off, the knight said curtly, frowning. Juvelian glanced briefly at the knight, her heart fluttering despite her irritation. Fine, I admit it. That sharp nose, those intense eyes. I was staring because he's handsome. But still, she fumed. What the hell are you looking at? Piss off? She trembled at the memory of his words. The shopkeeper's voice snapped her out of her thoughts. That'll be 2 silvers. Oh well, Juvelian said suddenly, improvising. What you're trying to buy is exactly what I was looking for. The shopkeeper raised an eyebrow. My lady, are you sure? This is armor polish. Her face turned crimson. I just don't like when my accessories lose their shine, she stuttered, inwardly screaming at herself. The shopkeeper beamed. Oh, you'll need more than one if you want to polish everything in your house. Wait, that's not... Juvelian began, but the shopkeeper dashed into the storeroom. The young knight sighed, tossing a gold coin onto the counter as he grabbed a bottle of the polish. Wait, your change! Juvelian called out. You paid a gold coin. It's too much. She hurried after him as he walked away. Hey, are you listening to me? She demanded, catching up just as he stopped abruptly, causing her to bump into his back. Are you not from around here? She asked in a whisper. 1 gold is enough to feed a commoner family for 2 weeks, and you just bought enough polish for 10 lifetimes. The knight turned to her, his piercing red eyes studying her closely. Before he could respond, the shopkeeper chimed in. I've packed everything up for you. Juvelian flinched. No, I don't need. Don't hold back, my lady. The shopkeeper teased. The knight silently turned and left, leaving Juvelian overwhelmed and stuck with the box of polish. Outside, the knight disappeared into an alley where a hooded female knight awaited him. Welcome back, my lord, she said, kneeling. I've passed on the details of your visit to Duke Floyan. Very well, the knight replied calmly. Did something happen, your highness? She asked, her concern evident. The knight paused, recalling the strange girl from the shop. It's nothing, he said before mounting his horse and riding away. Meanwhile, Juvelian stood with her father, holding the box of armor polish. What's that? Duke Legis asked. Armor polish, she muttered, still thinking about the encounter with the mysterious man. Does he have money to burn? Her father sighed. Let's go, he said, signaling to his knights. As they walked, Juvelian grew increasingly fatigued. What a long day. My feet hurt. When they reached a long staircase, she groaned inwardly. Just a little farther. I can't complain. I need to stay in his good graces if I want to keep living comfortably. But halfway up the stairs, she misstepped and cried out as she fell, only to be caught by her father. What are you doing? He asked gently. I'm sorry, she whispered, her face burning with embarrassment. Why didn't I watch my step? Before she could protest further, the Duke swept her into his arms. Father? Juvelian gasped, stunned and red-faced. We're going back to the carriage, he said. But I'm fine, she insisted, wriggling. Be quiet, he commanded, walking with her as curious onlookers whispered and stared. What's gotten into him? She wondered, mortified. First, he's weird in the accessory store, and now this. Please let me down. She tried again. We can go back to shopping. We're going home, he said firmly. But, Juvelian, he snapped, gripping her lightly. Stay still. She went quiet, glancing at his determined expression. Why does he care so much all of a sudden? Her exhaustion caught up with her. She felt her eyelids growing heavy, her breathing unsteady. Juvelian? Her father called, noticing her dazed expression. It's nothing, she murmured weakly. His eyes widened as her head lolled against his shoulder. Juvelian, he cried, his voice panicked. Don't tell me! It's just like last time, no! As her father shouted her name, Juvelian fainted in his arms. At home, Duke Legis sat by Juvelian's bedside, gently holding her hand. She lay unresponsive, her face pale. Get up, he murmured, his voice unsteady. If you leave me too, I'll have nothing left. He paused before calling softly, Juvel! In her unconscious state, Juvelian heard his plea. That's strange. You'd never call me that. She tried to make sense of the sorrow in his voice. Why do you sound like you're crying? Please get up, his voice pleaded again. Suddenly, Juvelian jolted awake, sweat beading on her face. Ow, my head, she groaned, disoriented. What a weird dream. The family doctor, Alan, rushed to her side. My lady, are you all right? He asked, adjusting his glasses. Alan? She mumbled, blinking in confusion. Do you have any idea how worried I was when you wouldn't wake up? Everyone's been breathing down my neck, he exclaimed, his voice trembling with relief. Despite his theatrics, Alan was the highly skilled family doctor of the Floyan household. I guess I fainted. How long was I out? Juvelian asked. 4 whole days, Alan replied, dabbing at his eyes with a handkerchief. Just then, Marilyn, her maid, burst into the room with the other maids in tow. My lady, are you all right? She cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. Juvelian looked around startled. Her gaze shifted to a corner of the room where piles of gifts were stacked. What's all that? She asked. Marilyn sniffled. All the ladies from important families sent gifts and letters, praying for your recovery. Yeah, right, Juvelian thought skeptically. She didn't have any real friends, so the gesture felt hollow. Duke Legis entered the room, prompting the maids to bow. Father? Juvelian thought, surprised as he approached. He placed the back of his hand against her forehead. You're awake, he said softly. Am I still dreaming? She wondered, stunned by his rare tenderness. Get some rest, he added before turning to leave. As I thought, he leaves right away. I shouldn't get my hopes up. He's only here for appearances. Juvelian's heart sank as the door closed behind him. The next morning, Juvelian reflected on the gifts and letters. They weren't sent out of genuine care. They're here because of Father's reputation. Without his influence, I'm nothing. Determined to change her image, she began replying to the letters personally. My lady, are you really going to reply to all of them? Marilyn asked nervously. Yes. They were worried about me. It's only polite to respond, Juvelian said, her focus unwavering. This is the first step in rebuilding my tarnished reputation. Afterward, Juvelian turned to studying. Father won't pass down his dukedom to me, so I need to prepare to manage the inheritance I'll receive instead. However, hours into her efforts, she sighed. This is exhausting. One afternoon, Juvelian entered the study, only to freeze upon seeing her father sitting there, a book in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. Father! Gee, good morning, she stammered, flinching. It's afternoon, he corrected calmly. Ah, yes, you're right, she said shyly, clutching her books. His gaze fell on the titles in her hands. Territory management? He noted. Yes, she replied, trying to sound confident. I was curious about the work you do as a lord. Why? He asked, his tone sharp. Does he think I'm after his estate? Juvelian panicked internally. It's just curiosity. No ulterior motive, she blurted, forcing a smile. Sit, he instructed, folding his arms. Juvelian complied, remembering Alan's warning to avoid stress. Relax, he said. How am I supposed to relax with him watching me like this? Do you know the 3 elements that make up a manor? He asked. Yes. establishing the land and public order, the lord who protects it, and the subjects responsible for production, she recited carefully. Good, he said, his expression unreadable. Let's see how much you know. He began asking her questions, one after another, testing her relentlessly. Why is he doing this? She thought, struggling to keep up. After 2 hours, a butler entered. My lord, your guest has arrived, he announced. Finally, Juvelian thought, hiding her relief. The Duke rose, placing a book in front of her. Read this, he said softly before leaving. Juvelian looked at the title and groaned inwardly. Strategy and Tactics? Juvelian read till evening. She was exhausted. As she lay on the table, she mistakenly hit a stack of books and a pendant slid out from between the pages. Father's? She wondered. Picking it up. Lantern in hand, she wandered the halls in search of him. He's probably in his study. I'll just return it and go back. As she approached a corner, a heated voice made her stop. Stop trying to convince me, her father's voice boomed. I'm not convincing you. I'm warning you, another unfamiliar voice countered. Don't stick your nose where it doesn't belong. Father, arguing with someone? Juvelian thought, peeking cautiously. Max, her father barked, his tone sharp. Juvelian wondered, her curiosity piqued as she watched the scene unfold from the shadows. Who is it? Are they close enough for father to call him by his first name? He doesn't look like a knight. Is he a mercenary? Juvelian wondered as she observed the crown prince from her hiding spot. Max turned his gaze toward her direction. She quickly ducked behind cover, tense, her hand pressed to her mouth. He nearly saw me, she thought, panic rising in her chest. Wait, that guy. He's the good-looking man from the armor store, she realized. The blade should be used to protect those precious to you, not just for killing, Duke Legis had told Max. Master, what's the point of having a weakness like that? Max replied, flashing a smirk. Master? Juvelian thought, still eavesdropping. I never knew father had a student. Sometimes, people become much stronger in order to protect that weakness, the Duke had said. What a load of nonsense. I'm busy, so I'll be on my way, Max had retorted, showing no sign of being moved. Wow, it's hard to believe, but the student is even ruder than the master, Juvelian mused. You'll find someone like that one day. Someone you want to protect, her father had said calmly. Someone you want to protect, Juvelian thought, remembering the past. Father had someone like that. The man who left his one and only daughter to die? I don't know about someone I want to protect, but I think I found a rat, Max had said, his gaze locking onto Juvelian's hiding spot. A rat? There's a rat here? I hate rats more than anything, Juvelian thought, heart racing. Allow me to take care of it, Max had said, drawing his sword. Yes, please do. Juvelian had thought inwardly, not realizing she was the rat in question. Don't, Duke Legis had ordered coldly, stopping Max before he could unsheath his sword. Father, why are you doing this? I can't take it anymore. I need to get out, Juvelian had thought, trembling with fear. If you so much as touch it, even if it's you, I won't show any mercy, Duke Legis had said, his words like ice. Juvelian peeked out, but this time they both saw her. She quickly retreated. I guess I'll just go back for now. My life's precious, after all, she thought, a wave of relief washing over her as she hurried to her room. Once they were alone, Duke Legis fixed his cold gaze on Max. Max, are you going to keep calling her that? Even though you know who she is? He asked, glaring at his student, the crown prince. It was too dark to tell, Max had denied. Humph. There's only one person you'd be so sensitive about, the Duke thought to himself. It had been 10 years since he started teaching Max the blade. Duke Legis had proposed training Max from a young age to help him survive on his own. Max had gone through intense training, and Duke Legis knew how cold and strict he could be. But the only time the Duke had ever let his guard down was with his daughter. She's my daughter, Duke Legis had said calmly. Juvel? Max had asked, confusion flickering in his eyes. Duke Legis smiled. That's right, I don't understand, Max had muttered. To think you'd tie a leash around your own neck over someone like that. I'll never end up like you. Max had clenched his fist, anger boiling inside him before he turned and stormed out of the castle. As he walked away, memories of his childhood resurfaced. Sir Legis, please protect that child until he can take care of himself, his mother had pleaded on her deathbed, Max weeping by her side. As you command, Legis had promised. Your Majesty, you must survive, the Queen had said, despite her frailty. After her passing during her funeral, Max had remained silent, quietly sobbing as he watched his mother's corpse in the rain. I knew this would happen the moment she lost the Emperor's favor. The prince might as well be a bird without wings now, someone had whispered. Come to think of it, for someone who was supposedly the mother of the prince, isn't this funeral a little too pathetic? Another noble had remarked. Max hadn't been able to hold back his tears as he heard the cruel remarks. That day, something had awakened in him, and his eyes had blazed red with anger. Max, I know the rage you hold in your heart. I was once the same as you. But what you don't know is... That child is the only reason I can live on without becoming a monster. I'm sure one day you'll meet someone who means the world to you too, Duke Legis thought, images of a young Juvelian flashing through his mind as he watched his student leave the hallway. In her room, Juvelian trembled beneath her bedsheet. A rat? Really? Marilyn had asked, her voice a little shaken as Juvelian nodded. But the people we hired last time said they caught every last one of them, the maid said, looking tense. They must have missed a few because the house is so big, Juvelian had said, shivering. Please don't worry, I'll tell the butler. Marilyn had said, trying to reassure her. We need to catch them right away. They'll start breeding if we leave them. Juvelian had said, her fear clear. In his study, Duke Legis was informed by his butler about Juvelian's growing concern. She's worried? He asked, pausing in his writing. We assigned some of the servants to catch the rats, but we haven't succeeded so far, the butler replied, looking concerned. Rats? Duke Legis thought for a moment. It seems she misunderstood my conversation with Max. There are no rats, the Duke decided, resting his chin on his hands. In that case, Derek, he said, calling the butler over. Yes, my lord? Derek asked, bowing. Where are rats usually found? Legis asked, his tone serious. The butler appeared puzzled. It's nothing, the Duke said quickly. How is the list of Juvelian's potential suitors coming along? We're gathering information on people's families, looks, wealth, and reputation. We should have everything ready by today, Derek reported. And Sir Mikhail sent another letter, he added, causing Duke Legis to flinch. Mikhail? The Duke said, his anger flaring. What did that bastard want? What's the bastard saying now? Duke Legis asked. He's still pressuring her for a reply. He regards Lady Juvelian's behavior as a desperate plea for attention and is speaking down to her. Derek replied, showing the Duke the letters. Is that so? Make sure no letters reach Juvelian, Legis ordered. I will inform the servants, my lord, Derek replied. No, I want you to take care of it. Burn them the moment they arrive, Duke Legis added, his tone cold. The next morning, Marilyn was excited to announce the capture of the rats. Really? Juvelian asked, pausing mid-bite as she had tea. Yes, they found a single rat in the trap. Judging by how there were no other rats, we think one just found its way inside by chance. Marilyn informed her happily. Now I can relax and go back inside, Juvelian thought, munching her cookies excitedly. Oh, and these are all letters for you, my lady, Marilyn said, presenting a letter. Juvelian was briefly taken aback, slowing her nibbling. She glanced at the letter. A letter from Earl Arlo's household? Is it a reply to the letter I sent last time? She thought, opening it. She saw it was an invitation to Earl Arlo's youngest daughter, Rose's 17th birthday. Juvelian paused, recalling from the past that Rose, the youngest daughter of Earl Arlo, later became a close confidant of the princess and was one of the people who tried to bring her down, even though we're not on bad terms right now. A birthday party, 3 weeks from now, Juvelian thought. Marilyn, she called. Yes, my lady, she replied softly. Bring me some flowers from the garden. And Sella, bring me some lace and ribbons, she said swiftly, instructing both maids. Being independent is all well and good, Juvelian thought, resuming her eating. Ah, and bring me some cake, she told Marilyn. I need to worry about fixing my death flag, too, she thought inwardly. Soon, Rose received a letter from Juvelian. Her eyes shone in amazement at the sight. Lady Floyan personally decorated all of this for me? It's beautiful, she exclaimed, rolling in her bed, overwhelmed with happiness. I was surprised she even replied to my letter, but to think she would accept my invitation, she said, her face flushed. To be honest, Rose had idolized Juvelian. She had tried to make contact in the past, but Juvelian was always around Mikhail, avoiding her, which made her sad. But that was all in the past now. I need to reply to her right away, she said excitedly. My lady, you need to act more dignified, her maid pleaded. Juvelian was stunned to receive a letter from Rose Arlo. I didn't expect another reply, she thought. Did she copy the letter I sent her? she wondered, seeing almost an identical design as the letter she had sent. Seeing the letter's content, she blushed. How adorable! But it's too long! She thought, seeing 10 pages worth of letter expressing Rose's thanks. The maids watched as Juvelian laughed after reading the letter. Based on what she's saying, it must be a pretty big party, Juvelian thought. Goodness, she's debating what to write to her first friend. I keep crying for some reason, Marilyn and Sella whispered, looking teary. Judging by how transparent her letter is, she's definitely expecting something from me, Juvelian thought inwardly. Around that time, in high society, the ladies gossiped amidst themselves at a tea party. Did you all see Lady Floyan's letter? One lady asked. Yes, it appears she's finally grown up, another said softly. There's no way that woman has changed. You all know what she's like. One scoffed. Exactly. Don't tell me you've forgotten what she's done, said a fourth. But that snobby lady accepted someone else's invitation rather than just ignoring it, the second lady said calmly. You don't say? She never went to anything that wasn't an imperial banquet. If it's Earl Arlo's daughter, it can't be particularly interesting. Could she be planning something? One lady asked. Unbeknownst to them, Mikhail was eavesdropping from a corner, his gaze dark. They say using pressed flowers and ribbons for letters is the latest craze now. I wonder if Lady Floyan knows that her letters created such a sensation, a lady said. Mikhail clenched his fist, his anger rising. Juvelian, I see. Earl Arlo's household, huh? He thought before leaving. Back at his manor, Mikhail was welcomed by his butler as he pulled on his suit. Send a letter to Earl Arlo's household that I'll be attending the party after all, he said, handing his suit to his butler. Yes, young master, the butler replied, bowing. Oh, and have there been no letters addressed to me? He asked as he sat. No, sir. Is there a particular letter you're expecting? The butler asked. No, leave me, he commanded. Yes, sir, his butler replied, leaving the room. So this is how you're going to play, is it? How dare you ignore only my letter? Juvelian, you must be desperate for my attention. I'll make you regret this, he thought in anger, breaking his teacup, his hands bleeding as he trembled with rage. In the bustling market, Juvelian already felt exhausted. What a pain. Considering how much Lady Arlo is looking forward to her birthday, I can't just pick any present for her. She sighed inwardly, her frustration growing. And to think father assigned this many guards for a simple shopping trip. She glanced around at the dozen knights flanking her, their presence drawing the attention of every passerby. Duke Legis had insisted she wouldn't be allowed to leave the manor unless escorted by a knight. A knight? This is more like a horde of knights, father, she thought, tense under their watchful gazes. I just wanted a quiet, simple life. As they walked, Juvelian stopped in front of a small, empty workshop. Juvelian, are you sure this is where you want to go? Asked Sir Geraldine, her cousin and the lead knight. Sir Geraldine, shouldn't you show a little more respect in public? And yes, I'm certain this is the place, she replied confidently. Geraldine frowned as he eyed the modest workshop. There's a much bigger, better-looking one next door. First the armor store and now this? Her taste is so poor, he thought, exchanging doubtful glances with the other knights as they stationed themselves at the entrance. Inside, the workshop felt quiet and neglected. A craftsman sat slouched in a corner, his expression weary. Forgive me, but I can't take on any commissions right now. I don't know which family you're from, but I suggest you visit the Grotto workshop next door, he said, adjusting his glasses as he avoided eye contact. My lady, I'm afraid we'll need to find another place, Geraldine suggested cautiously. It's fine, Juvelian replied firmly. She stepped closer. Ian Fyodor, I want you to make something for me. At the sound of his name, Ian looked up. His dull gaze seemed to brighten as though Juvelian's presence lit up the room. But why? Why me? He asked hesitantly, fidgeting with his hands. You're the only one who can make what I need, she said gently. Ian looked away, shaking his head. Please leave. I'm in no condition to work right now, he said, rising from his seat and heading toward the back door. Juvelian's calm voice stopped him mid-step. I believe in you. Ian paused, turning to her with wide eyes. You believe in me? Yes. If it's you, I know you'll create something far better than anyone else, she said warmly. Ian's eyes began to glisten, and he quickly turned away, wiping at them. Ah, sorry. Just some dust in my eye, he muttered. Juvelian smirked inwardly. Ian Fyodor was a hidden gem, a craftsman destined to become the Empire's best. His work for the princess's coming-of-age ceremony in 6 months would revolutionize high society. Getting him on my side now is a smart move before his value skyrockets, she thought, watching him regain his composure. What kind of item would you like me to create? Ian asked, his tone cautious but eager. Oh, I'll explain, she replied, her smile widening. Am I finally going to get a masterpiece? She wondered to herself. Back at the Floyan Manor, Derek entered Duke Legis's study holding a document. My lord, we've completed the list of suitable suitors for Lady Juvelian, he said, handing it over. Duke Legis scanned the names, his eyes narrowed when he saw the Crown Prince's name. Why is this brat on the list? He thought, circling the name. Derek, remove this name and... He began, but a knock at the door interrupted him. My lord, a butler said, entering. A messenger from the Emperor requests your immediate presence at the palace. Meanwhile, Juvelian continued her shopping. Now that Ian has his project, maybe I should pick up some makeup and perfume. I couldn't last time with father watching over me. She sighed. This feels uncomfortable for a different reason, though. As they passed another shop, a pair of cufflinks on display caught her attention. Wow, they're so neat and pretty. I bet they'd look great on father, she thought. That's it. I can give him these and return the pendant while I'm at it. He might get less mad if I give him this as a gift, she reasoned. I'll take this one, she told the seller, smiling. Before she could leave, a familiar voice called out, Who do we have here? If it isn't Lady Floyan. Juvelian turned to see a smirking man enter the shop. Radian Droyle. Mikhail's cousin on his mother's side and leader of the social circle infamous for gossip. The serpent's tongue, she thought. Yes, it's been a while, Sir Droyle, she said coolly, glaring at him. Isn't it basic manners to pretend not to recognize your cousin's ex? She thought bitterly. Sir Droyle? Please, he said, bowing dramatically and grabbing her hand. If you call me that just because you broke up with Mikhail, you'll break my heart. Call me Radian, my beautiful lady, he said, kissing her hand. Juvelian pulled her hand away sharply, her glare sharpening. How rude. He's just doing this to provoke me. I'd love to stay and chat, but I have somewhere to be. Please excuse me, she said, turning to leave. Radian smirked. Is something wrong? One might think you're running away, he teased, but Sir Geraldine swiftly stepped between them, blocking his path. Radian's gaze fell to the cufflinks Juvelian had purchased. His smirk widened. Thank you, my lady. It's barely been a few days since you broke up with Mikhail, and yet you're already buying cufflinks for another man. I wonder how Mikhail will react when he hears this, he thought, his smile full of mischief. Duke Legis arrived at the Ashet Empire Palace, walking briskly through the grand halls until he stood before the king. You called, your majesty? He asked, bowing deeply. The king tapped his fingers rhythmically on the armrest of his throne. Duke Floyan, a rat has found its way into my palace. I won't be able to sleep peacefully until it's dealt with. I would like you, my most trusted servant, to handle this personally. As you command, Legis replied without hesitation. So, he wants me to find the one behind the assassination attempt and eliminate them, Legis thought. The king's cold voice interrupted his musings. But the rat we captured killed himself without leaving a shred of evidence. You'll stay here at the palace and investigate thoroughly, won't you? Understood. I will remain here for a few days. The king smirked. As expected, having you by my side brings me great relief. Outside the palace, Legis was met by his knights. Their concern was evident. My lord, are you truly planning to follow this order? With no evidence left behind, you may be stuck here for weeks. The hero of the Empire shouldn't be forced to take on such tasks. Legis stopped in his tracks and turned to face them, his expression composed. Watch your words. We're in the palace. There's no need for you all to attract suspicion as well. From the shadows of a nearby tree, Max observed the scene. His gaze was sharp, his expression unreadable. You could crush that scum at any moment, yet you let him live. How disappointing, Master. How long will you let the Emperor use your weakness against you? Max's thoughts churned as he clenched his fists. Because of her. Because she's family. Is that why she's so precious to you? I used to think you were like me, a man who could destroy anything in his way. But when it comes to her, you're vulnerable. That weakness has allowed even the Emperor, who sees everyone as a tool, to put a leash around your neck. He recalled Legis's words from the night he left the manor. Sometimes people grow stronger because they have something they need to protect. Max scoffed inwardly. Nonsense. Fine. I'll see for myself if she's truly worth it, he thought, pulling his hood over his head and slipping away from the palace unnoticed. At the Droyle estate, Radian strolled into Mikhail's study unannounced, interrupting his cousin mid-conversation. Long time no see, Mikhail. Mind if I sit? My legs hurt, he said with a dramatic sigh, settling into a chair. Mikhail frowned, his patience already thin. What do you want? Radian feigned hurt, placing a hand on his chest. You're so cold. Not even a cup of tea? Fine, I'll get straight to it. I have some good news for you. Mikhail exhaled sharply. Radian's smirk widened. No wonder Lady Floyan left you. With how cold you are, she must have found someone else. Mikhail froze, his expression darkening. What nonsense are you spouting? Where did you hear that? Radian leaned back lazily. I saw her myself. She bought cufflinks as a gift. You know what that means, don't you? It's a sign of intimacy. And between lovers, it often means, you are mine. Mikhail's jaw tightened as anger flickered in his eyes. You're lying. Radian grinned, watching his words take effect. Oh, I thought you'd be relieved. You were so worried she didn't truly want to break up with you. This should make it clear, right? A servant entered the room, but Radian dismissed him with a wave. Ah, perfect timing. This is going to take a while. Bring us some tea. Mikhail's voice cut through the room like a blade. Enough. Leave, Radian. Radian stood, his smirk unwavering. Fine, I'll go. Sorry if I ruined your mood. Though I wonder if it's really my fault. He added, his words dripping with mockery as he sauntered out. The moment he was gone, Mikhail's fury erupted. She found someone else? He muttered, slamming his fist against a nearby shelf. Memories of Juvelian's tearful confession of love played in his mind, fueling his anger. After saying I was the only one she'd ever love. Juvelian! Blood dripped from his hand, but he didn't notice. My lord, you're injured! The butler exclaimed, alarmed. Mikhail's gaze darkened. No matter what, you'll pay for making a fool out of me, he vowed inwardly, his teeth clenched. At the Floyan manor that evening, Juvelian sat by her window, her expression somber. Is he late because of work again? She wondered, her voice soft. Mariline, her maid, hesitated before speaking. The Duke said he won't be coming home for a few days due to training, my lady. Juvelian sighed. I see. She looked down at the cufflinks in her hand. I wanted to return these and the pendant as soon as possible. Mariline observed her mistress with concern. She looks so sad when the Duke isn't home. Later that night, Juvelian drifted off while reading in bed. The stillness of the night was broken by a faint sound. Outside, a shadow moved across her window. As Max slipped into her room, his sharp eyes scanned the dimly lit space, stopping on Juvelian. She lay fast asleep, her face serene and peaceful. She looked so weak. To think she'd be this defenseless. Anyone could get to her at any moment, he thought, his brow furrowing. Why is he so obsessed with something like this? Max moved closer to the bed, his steps soundless and deliberate. A shadow crossed his face as his thoughts darkened. Someone I want to protect? Give me a break. I could snap her like a twig, he told himself, extending his hand toward her neck. But just as his fingers hovered over her skin, he froze. Juvelian stirred, her eyes fluttering open as her breathing hitched. She blinked up at him, her gaze hazy and unfocused. Her voice, soft and still heavy with sleep, broke the silence. I don't know who you are, but I think you're in the wrong house. Max stiffened, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. What? She was awake? Juvelian rubbed her eyes with a small fist, her movements slow and casual as if nothing were amiss. A faint yawn escaped her lips. This is Duke Floyan's residence, you see, she said with a trace of annoyance. Max stared at her, utterly dumbfounded. What is wrong with this woman? Shouldn't people panic in situations like this? Does she have some hidden trump card I don't know about? He finally found his voice, though his tone was sharp and low. I'm in the right place! Juvelian raised an eyebrow, her lips quirking slightly. Really? Then maybe you should think again. You're going to regret this. Her calm defiance made him twitch. He couldn't decide if she was oblivious, fearless, or simply insane. Juvelian mumbled to herself, her words barely audible but dripping with fatigue. I still have at least a year until I die. Max's frown deepened. Does she not understand the situation she's in? Juvelian reached lazily for a matchstick on her bedside table, striking it to produce a tiny flame. Max's hand darted out, snatching it from her grasp before the fire could grow. You dare light a match in this situation? Is there nothing you're afraid of? He snapped, his irritation spilling into his voice. But as he looked into her eyes, he faltered. How are her eyes so calm? Juvelian tilted her head, studying him with a mix of curiosity and drowsiness. Suddenly, recognition brightened her expression. Father's student! She exclaimed, her cheeks tinged pink as she sat up slightly. Max's thoughts came to a screeching halt as her face jogged his memory. This woman. She's the one I saw at the armor shop. Juvelian sighed, relief washing over her as she flopped back onto the bed. Thank goodness it wasn't an assassin, she muttered, closing her eyes briefly. Her earlier fear flashed through her mind, the shadow at her window, the presence creeping closer in the dark. Is this a dream? No, it's too vivid. The only reason someone would come here in the middle of the night? Could they be a thief? Or worse, an assassin? Her thoughts spiraled. Who would even hire an assassin to kill me? Oh, wait, it must be Father's enemies. Damn it, past me. Why did you have to make him so many enemies by being so evil? Her body trembled as fear crept in. But I can't die now. The main villain of the story can't just die like this. Not when I have to cause that huge mess at the princess's coming-of-age celebration. I have to survive! Summoning her courage, Juvelian had confronted the intruder, only to discover it was Max. Now, her relief turned to irritation as she sat on the bed. Hey, you, Max called, his tone sharp. She frowned, glaring at him. Excuse me, can you stop being so rude? You might be Father's student, but you should still show some manners. Max's lip curled in annoyance. And why should I? Juvelian huffed. Wow, so rude as usual. And you're the one who barged into my room in the middle of the night. If you weren't Father's student, I would have totally freaked out, she muttered under her breath. Before either could say more, a knock came at the door, followed by a concerned voice. My lady, is something wrong? Juvelian glanced toward the door, startled. But before she could respond, Max moved with lightning speed. He grabbed her, one arm around her shoulders, drawing his sword. Her eyes widened in shock. What is he doing now? My lady, is something wrong? The guards asked, not hearing any response. Juvelian tensed, understanding why Max had drawn his sword against her neck as he held her. He wants me to send them away, she thought. Yes, I'm fine, she said calmly. I couldn't get to sleep, so I figured I'd do some reading. Ah, I see, the guards replied from outside before leaving. Could you lower your sword now? I did what you wanted, she said, tapping him as she realized her guards were gone. What did you just say? Max asked, his gaze serious. I don't know why you're mad, but you're the one who barged in here without permission, which means you're the one. She started, but then yawned, causing him to look perplexed. Yawning? In this situation? Max thought, feeling awkward. Oops, I was so sleepy that I couldn't help myself, she thought, startled as she closed her mouth. Max released her as he withdrew his sword. What are you doing? He asked, causing her to flinch. You woke me up, so I'm getting sleepy now. Do you mind going back home? She asked. He was quiet for a moment before replying. I don't have a home. She looked at him, surprised. I thought he might be before, but is he really a mercenary? She wondered. Then are you just traveling around? She asked, her gaze fixed on him. Mercenaries usually stay in inns, she thought, observing him more closely. Could he be homeless? Ah, so he was kicked out. He must have come looking for Father because he had nowhere else to go, she thought, lost in thought as he stared at her. Come to think of it, the last time he was here, there wasn't a large welcome or servants attending him, which means he wasn't an official guest. Did he get lost using one of the side entrances and accidentally end up in my room? What should I do? Father isn't here right now, she thought. Juvelian let out a sigh. I guess I have no choice, she thought inwardly. If you have nowhere to go, you can stay here for a while, she told him. What? Max replied, looking dumbfounded. Since Father isn't here, I have to take care of his guests for him, she thought. She glanced at some blankets nearby, picked one up, and placed it on him. There's no need to thank me. You can pay me back when you're rich and famous. I'm going back to sleep now. You should get some sleep too, she said, returning to her bed and yawning before drifting off. Max was speechless. What in the world is she doing? He thought, stunned. She really fell asleep. Why isn't she scared of me? Everyone's either terrified to be near me or busy hiding their fear by sucking up to me, he thought, still processing the events of the night. Those eyes. For an instant, her eyes looked so detached from everything. I shouldn't overthink this. She's just another obstacle in my path. I have to take care of her here. Once I eliminate Master's weakness, the Emperor won't have a hold over him anymore. Then we'll get rid of the Emperor together, like we always planned, he thought, his gaze turning dark. He recalled her cheerful look when she called him her father's student. His hand hovered near her neck as he observed her. She's sleeping without a care in the world. Just looking at her is making me sleepy, he said, holding his head. Wait, me sleepy? Here? He thought, flinching tiredly. In the battlefield, where death is always around the corner, going without sleep is a given. Even when I rested, I never once let my guard down. I can't sleep here. No, he muttered, eyes closing. All right, just a little, then, he said before drifting off to sleep beside her. A dragon appeared in the city, breathing fire and causing destruction. Dragon! Everybody run! People shouted as they fled in panic. Juvelian, exhausted and unable to run further, stumbled and fell to the floor. She covered her ears, bracing for the worst. Just then, Duke Legis, her father, appeared in front of her, confronting the dragon. You dare hurt my daughter? You'll die for this, he shouted, standing firm despite the dragon's terrifying presence. Juvelian blinked, confused. Father, she thought, watching him unflinchingly face the danger. Suddenly, Juvelian woke up with a gasp. A dream? A dragon dream, she thought, brushing her hair back as she sat up in bed. That's odd. I don't dream about dragons often, but it's supposed to be a lucky dream. Maybe today will be a good day, she thought, rolling to her side. But she froze when she saw Max sleeping beside her on her bed. What? Why is he sleeping in my room? Her heart raced as she stared at him, unsure what to make of the situation. She hesitated, watching him sleep peacefully. Well, nothing happened. I guess I can just pretend he wanted my bed, she reasoned, but then quickly thought about the potential rumors about her. What if someone finds us like this? I need to wake him, she decided, reaching for him. Before she could, Max suddenly grabbed her hand and pinned her down to the floor. What do you think you're doing? He asked, his eyes locked on hers. Juvelian, caught off guard, responded, You look like you had a good sleep, judging by how lively you are this morning, causing Max to flinch. Max's reaction confused her. I fell asleep? That's impossible, he exclaimed, looking unsettled. Wow, how can someone be so ungrateful? I even let him stay over, Juvelian thought, frustrated. First, he barges into my room without warning, sleeps on my bed, and now he's acting all innocent and rude at the same time? I'm done being nice. As she observed his expression, she couldn't help but laugh, catching Max off guard. Why are you laughing? He asked, glaring at her. Juvelian, still chuckling, thought, He's so similar, like a human version of the grumpy black cat I knew when I was young. She continued laughing, remembering how that cat would sleep on her bed and always act so proud and grouchy. I can't stop laughing, he's just like him, she thought, trying to apologize between giggles. Suddenly, a voice from outside called, My lady, are you awake? Causing both of them to freeze. Juvelian quickly stood up, thinking fast. I need to calm down. I can't let the servants see us like this, she thought. She motioned for Max to follow her. Come over here, she told him, pushing him gently into her wardrobe. Stay here and don't make a sound. You don't want anyone to get the wrong idea, do you? Max looked confused. The wrong idea? He asked. Juvelian, smirking, replied, Something like us spending the night together for other reasons? Max's face flushed. Other reasons? He repeated, stunned. I don't care about that, he started, but Juvelian interrupted him, grinning. In animal terms, I guess you'd call it mating? Max's expression froze, his face turning red. What the hell are you talking about? He asked, his tone rising. Juvelian quickly placed her hand over his mouth, whispering urgently, Are you crazy? The servants are right outside. You can't shout like that. Just then, Marilene's voice called from outside the door. My lady, as she reached for the handle. Why is it locked? Marilene wondered aloud, finding Juvelian's door closed. Inside, Juvelian kept her hand over Max's mouth to keep him quiet. You don't want people getting the wrong idea, right? I'm the same, she thought, speaking softly to him. So, if you want to stay here, you need to cooperate with me, she told him as he silently nodded in agreement. She let go of his mouth and smiled. That's better. You should have said yes from the start, she added, tapping his head lightly, causing him to flinch. You dare touch my head? Max thought, glaring inwardly. My lady, Marilyn called from outside. Yes, Juvelian replied, quickly slamming the wardrobe door shut, leaving Max inside. She opened the door to Marilyn and apologized. I'm sorry if I worried you. It wasn't anything serious. I just got scared someone might barge in, she explained, avoiding eye contact with her maid. Marilyn seemed tense. Oh, Lady Juvelian, who would be crazy enough to do that? This is the Floyan household. Even thieves know to avoid it, she said with a smile. Juvelian thought, right here. There's someone crazy enough right here, referring to Max hidden in the wardrobe. You never know. Father's not here right now, after all, she added quietly. Marilyn's eyes softened with concern. She's anxious because Lord Floyan isn't here, Marilyn thought, and glanced at the closet. That cat hiding in the closet better stay quiet. She grabbed Juvelian's hands, her eyes teary. My lady, Lord Floyan will be back soon, safe and sound. Instead of worrying, maybe you should go get some fresh air, she suggested gently. Juvelian noticed Marilyn's gaze on her wrist and quickly hid it. My lady! Your wrist! Marilyn exclaimed, looking shocked. Meanwhile, Max remained crouched in the wardrobe, fidgeting uncomfortably. How long do I have to stay here? He wondered. I can't keep wasting time like this. What am I even doing here? He shifted, trying to make sense of the situation. She's so strange. She laughs when she should be scared. I don't get it. After 20 minutes of waiting in the cramped space, Max grew restless. What's taking her so long? He thought. Suddenly, he heard a voice nearby. He crouched lower, straining to listen. Juvelian's voice was faint but clear. Not there, Marilyn. A little lower. Here? Max flinched as he heard her words, thinking, What's going on outside? Don't tell me. He felt a twinge of panic, thinking they were doing something inappropriate. Wait, what am I thinking? But he stayed put, trying not to make a sound. Then he heard Marilyn say, As expected, getting medicine from the doctor might be best, my lady, which made him stop in his tracks. It's okay, the ointment should be enough, Juvelian replied calmly. Max ground his teeth, thinking, acting like she's hurt when she's fine. Inside the room, Juvelian pulled her dress down, revealing her bruised back. It looks so painful. Your wrist and shoulder are covered in bruises, Marilyn said, looking concerned as she applied ointment. She's bruised? Max thought, his tension rising as he processed what he was hearing. It's my fault for being careless and falling off the bed, Juvelian explained softly to Marilyn. Max remembered how he had knocked her down when she tried to wake him earlier. I guess she got hurt back then, he thought, feeling a stab of guilt. Damn it. The strong survive, and the weak die. It's only natural. Please get some rest, my lady, Marilyn said before leaving the room. Okay, Juvelian replied. After a moment, she returned to the wardrobe where Max was hiding. She's here, Max thought, sensing her presence near the wardrobe. She slowly opened the door, and when he saw her cheerful face, he blinked in surprise. You can come out now, she said brightly, her eyes sparkling. Max stepped out, his face flushed. You're hungry, right? She asked with a smile. Want to eat together? Why? Max asked, still flustered. Because it tastes better if you eat with someone, she replied softly, grabbing his hand gently. Come on, I hope you're hungry. Our head chef is amazing at cooking, she said with enthusiasm, her face glowing as she led him out. Max's heart raced as he followed her, his face turning red. They were seated for breakfast. Juvelian had prepared cucumber sandwiches, but Max couldn't help but frown at the sight. Cucumbers, he thought, his dislike for them clear. Unbeknownst to Juvelian, Max hated cucumbers more than anything. Why aren't you eating? Juvelian asked softly, noticing his hesitation. Max flinched, caught off guard. I'm just about to, he said, reaching for a slice. Do I really have to eat this? He thought, looking at her briefly. The plan is to get rid of the master's weakness and leave this place. He stared at Juvelian's glistening face and reluctantly took a bite. How is it? Delicious, right? Juvelian asked, her face flushed with anticipation. Max froze, swallowing the bite, his mind racing. What am I doing here? He wondered, trying to keep his composure as she watched him expectantly. That's a relief, Juvelian said, her smile radiant. I was worried you wouldn't like it. Max's face turned slightly red, his heart racing. Maybe cucumbers aren't so bad after all, he thought, continuing to eat with her. Meanwhile, at the Empire Palace, the Prime Minister, Duke Elios, made his way to see the Emperor. The palace has too many gossips, he thought. To think the news of Duke Floyan protecting the Emperor has reached even my ears. As he approached the guards at the entrance, he declared, I'm here to see the Emperor. The guards allowed him to pass. At this rate, the people will turn against him. Just like last time, he mused, stepping into the Emperor's presence. Your Majesty, do you intend to keep using him as your guard? He asked, kneeling before the Emperor. Isn't it obvious? There is no better hunting dog than him, the Emperor replied coldly. Duke Elios remained silent as the Emperor's mind wandered back to a pivotal moment in history. 20 years ago, during the war between the Ashlet Empire and the Kingdom of Tegeria, the Emperor, forced on the defensive, evacuated the palace. A lone palace knight stepped forward to defend the Empire, Legis Adrate Floyan, a coward and a war hero who led the Empire to victory. Thanks to his support, talk of dethroning the Emperor died down, though the commoners still see him as a coward. Your Majesty, if you keep insisting on giving Duke Floyan these ineffective orders, resentment against you will only grow, Duke Elios said, his tone calm yet firm. Perhaps setting a trap to find out who's behind the assassins would be a better use of your time. The Emperor's face twitched, and his voice darkened. There is no need for you to worry. I will handle it myself. Leave me, Duke Elios. Your Majesty, the Prime Minister persisted, while past fame is important, it pales compared to one's current prestige. If you wish to keep the Duke in check, you must summon the Crown Prince back to court. I pray you make the right decision. The Emperor clenched his fists in anger, trembling slightly. How dare he try to tell me what to do when he doesn't know anything? The Emperor's eyes narrowed, his gaze falling on a glowing ring on his finger. As long as I have this, that man can never disobey me. His face darkened. Back at the Floyan Manor, Juvelian yawned as she read. I feel so sleepy. Is it because I just ate? She wondered. She glanced over at Max, who lay still in the chair, looking perfectly relaxed. He looks so comfortable. I bet he doesn't even know that the couch he's on is my favorite spot, she thought with a pout. What are you looking at? Max asked, glancing at her. Oh, you just looked really comfortable, she replied, smiling. Not really, he answered curtly. When is he planning to leave? Juvelian wondered. Don't tell me it's when Father comes home. Why do you keep looking at me? Max asked, turning toward her. I was just thinking that you must be really close to my father, she said softly. We're not on bad terms, Max replied, his gaze serious. Of course not, Juvelian thought, feeling something stir within her. That gentle expression, those warm words, it almost felt like I was looking at a completely different person. She remembered her father's words that night. Come to think of it, I still need to give Father the cufflinks and the pendant. If he's Father's student, he should know what he likes, right? Juvelian stayed quiet, watching Max, deep in thought. If you want to say something, spit it out, he said, his voice slightly irritated. I hate wasting time. What do you think about giving cufflinks as a present? She asked, her voice soft. A present? Max looked at her, confused. Juvelian's face flushed, and she hid behind her book. Father wouldn't hate it, right? She wondered. Why isn't he saying anything? Suddenly, Max yanked the book from her hands, revealing her face. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. And who's the present for? He asked, his tone sharper now. Juvelian looked up, noticing the serious expression on Max's face. He was on the sofa just a moment ago, she thought, surprised by his sudden change in position. Who else would I give cufflinks to? I'm sure you know, she replied softly, avoiding his gaze. Max recalled the reports from his knights. Lady Floyan is infatuated with Sir Mikhail to the point that she doesn't care about her reputation, following him around wherever he goes. He frowned. Is she really going to go back to that man? Foolish, he thought, perplexed by her behavior. You're going to give a present to that poor excuse for a man? He asked bluntly. Hey, that's going too far, Juvelian retorted, standing up quickly from her seat. She's taking his side when I'm trying to help her? Max thought, coldly watching her. Clinging to someone who doesn't even like you. You must have no self-respect, he added, his tone sharp. She glared at him. Huh? Max thought, confused by her reaction. I'm not clinging to him. I'm just giving it to him because I want us to get along. He's my father, she explained, making Max pause. She was talking about her father, Duke Florian, he thought, a flush of realization creeping over him. You were talking about your father? He asked, his voice tightening with tension. What do you mean? Who else would I be talking about? Juvelian replied, sounding unfazed. Max flushed, a little embarrassed by his misunderstanding. She watched him curiously as he smiled, though she was puzzled by his reaction. What? Why are you laughing? She asked, a hint of irritation in her voice. Instead of responding immediately, Max leaned forward. You said you're giving him cufflinks, right? Yes, these ones, she said, showing him the cufflinks. What a completely useless gift for a swordsman, he remarked, causing her to snap back. I assume you pick great presents, then? She replied with a smile, her tone challenging. Max smirked, clearly amused by her retort. I guess I did give my father a present not too long ago, he said casually. He looked bored recently, so it was satisfying to see him perk up in his old age because of me. Juvelian's eyes sparkled. Ooh, what was it? None of your business, Max replied dismissively, though his tone softened slightly as he added, Duke Florian will like anything as long as it's from you. Juvelian flinched, clearly not believing him. Max observed her expression and sighed inwardly. She doesn't believe me, he thought, watching her with a puzzled look. If it were that easy, I wouldn't have asked you in the first place, she said, shutting the box and smiling. Doesn't she realize how much he cares about her? Max thought, feeling a mix of disbelief and frustration. What a joke. He's sacrificing so much for her, and she doesn't even know it? Back at the palace, Legis remained still on a tree. A bird landed on his shoulder, and he gently held it on his finger, watching it sing. My lord, came Geraldine's voice from below. What is it? Legis asked, still perched on the tree. I have news from the manor. Lady Juvelian, Geraldine replied. Juvelian? Legis murmured, quickly descending the tree in haste. Speak, did something happen to her? He asked, his eyes narrowing in concern. No, it's not that. The young lady is said to be anxious because of your absence, Geraldine reported. She's looking for me? Legis thought, stunned by the news. She never said this before. His heart softened as a smile spread across his face. Juvel, he thought, his cheeks flushed with emotion. Geraldine noticed the change in him. The Duke is smiling, he thought, surprised by the rare display of affection. They say the young lady is too sick to even leave her room. It seems she's quite depressed, Geraldine added, his voice sympathetic. Legis's expression turned sad. Juvel. His fist clenched in frustration. This is enough. I shouldn't have to put on an act for Max's sake anymore. Determined, he turned to walk toward the king's court. We're going to see His Majesty immediately, he said, his tone serious. At Florian Manor, Juvelian sat with a tense expression as she stared at her paper, uncertain of what to write next. I doubt you need to write that, Max protested, looking tense as he observed her from the sofa. I can't just give him a present and nothing else, she replied, tearing the paper in frustration. He'll like it even if you do, Max thought inwardly, watching her carefully. What on earth am I supposed to write in this letter? I was never close to father, Juvelian thought, deep in thought. Hey, she called, drawing Max's attention. What? He responded, lying down on the sofa. What do you usually talk about with my father? She asked. With Master? He replied, looking up. Yes, she confirmed. He paused, briefly quiet, as he recalled how Legis would always boast about the things Juvelian did which made him smile. The endless bragging made him frown. I don't know. We never really talked much, Max replied, looking tense. He's no help at all, Juvelian muttered, her frustration mounting. Whatever. I'll do it on my own. An hour later, she held up the paper, satisfied. All done, she exclaimed, causing Max to look perplexed. You're really going to send it like that? He asked, standing up from the sofa, still looking tense. Of course. I'm admitting my mistakes and begging for forgiveness. Perfect, right? She asked, a hopeful tone in her voice. That's just a letter of apology, Max thought, glancing at the contents. All right, I'm going to leave the letter for him, she said, holding the present in her hand as she stood up. That's really not much of a letter, he thought, watching her. You know what to do if someone comes inside, yes? She asked, and he nodded. I'll be right back, she said, leaving the room. Good luck, Max told her as she left. Alone in the room, Max's expression turned serious. Master's reaction will certainly be something worth seeing, he thought. At the Ashet Empire Imperial Audience Chamber, Legis knelt before the Emperor. Duke Floyan, it's already been 14 days since I ordered you to find the mastermind. Why do you have no news for me? The Emperor demanded, his tone serious. I have not found the source of the problem yet, Your Majesty, Legis replied coolly. That is unacceptable. You should have caught that damn rat by now, the Emperor yelled, banging his fist against the armrest. Max, you called my daughter a rat. I guess this is what you deserve, Legis thought, smiling softly to himself. I already knew that the assassination attempt on the Emperor was Max's doing. He probably wanted to create conflict between us, Legis thought, unfazed by the Emperor's glare. In that moment, Max's harsh words echoed in his mind. Are you afraid of that weakling? I'm not afraid, Legis had replied. The only reason I haven't attacked him is because the time is not yet ripe. He glared back at the Emperor, his gaze cold and intimidating. The Emperor flinched, looking stunned. They will not attack you again? Legis said calmly. How can you be so sure? The Emperor asked, almost stuttering. During my time protecting you, I strengthened the guard around the palace, and as long as everyone's attention is drawn here, they will not attempt another gamble like this, Legis replied, his voice steady. The Emperor trembled, still glaring at Legis. He sure gives a good excuse for his own incompetence, the Emperor thought angrily. Legis, you dare. Still, stay a few more days so I can save some face, the Emperor muttered. I will stay one more day, Legis replied. He's getting more impudent by the day, the Emperor thought, clenching his fists angrily. He recalled Duke Aleos's words. Your Majesty, if you wish to keep the Duke in check, you must summon the Crown Prince back to court, the Prime Minister had told him. That's right. It's been a while since he's reacted to his weakness. In that case, I'll tie another leash around your neck. I'll make it look like I'm going to give the throne to Maximilian, provided he acts as the pawn to keep that bastard in check, the Emperor thought, his thoughts growing darker. Back at Floyan Manor, Juvelian made her way to Legis's study. Since Father's a workaholic, he'll be visiting his study first, right? She wondered. Arriving at the study, she opened the door slowly and surveyed the room. Was it always this big? She thought, noticing the imposing space. Anyway, it's a relief Father isn't here. Giving it to him face to face would have been a bit too much. I'll just leave this here and go, she decided, feeling tense as she approached his desk. An open document caught her attention. A list of suitors? She thought, scanning the names. When her eyes landed on the Crown Prince's name circled, her breath caught in shock. Why? Why is the Crown Prince's name here? She thought, her hands trembling as she held the paper. Don't tell me he's planning to marry me off to the Crown Prince? She dropped the cufflinks box to the floor in shock, her heart racing as she tried to make sense of the document. Avoiding exaggeration. He never said anything to me, Juvelian thought, trembling. Then, she recalled her earlier conversation with her father when he asked, What do you look for in a man? Money, honor, family, looks, abilities. If a man doesn't have all of these at the highest level, I don't want to marry him, she had told him out of fear. Don't tell me it's because of what I said that time, she thought, feeling a chill run down her spine. The name Maximilian Cassian Ashet came to mind, the Crown Prince of the Empire. He had family, abilities, honor, and everything else. But he was considered a maniac, someone who didn't hesitate to kill, a depraved individual always scheming to steal his father's throne, and a heartless psychopath, one of the worst villains. He even tried to torture me, she recalled, the memory of his fierce red eyes in her past life haunting her. Marrying me off to someone like that, she thought, trembling with fear and frustration. He obviously just wants to make me a part of the imperial family. How could you do this to me, Father? In her room, Max remained on the sofa, glancing at the door. Was this room always this big? When is she coming? He wondered. What's taking so long? Just then he sensed a change in the air from the window and felt someone's presence. As the figure reached for him, Max quickly grabbed their neck and slammed them against the wall. What are you doing here? He demanded, his gaze sharp. If you could just let me go. The hooded man gasped for breath. Max tightened his grip slightly, his eyes cold. The madam sent me. The man wheezed. She said that you might be here. Max released him, letting the man fall to the floor, coughing. So, what do you want? Max asked. We've received reports that the Emperor's movements have been suspicious lately, the messenger said, catching his breath. Naturally, he should be busy trying to protect himself after the present I gave him, Max replied with a grin. That's not the only reason. Due to recent demands by the Prime Minister and a few nobles, it appears he's speeding up preparations for your return. Your presence is urgently required, Your Highness, Prince Maximilian, the man said, bowing and presenting a sword. In Legis's study, Juvelian had dried her tears and was feeling slightly more composed. I should go back to my room for now, she thought. I can't let myself be sold off to that psychopath tyrant, but it's the imperial family I'm dealing with. If I'm being matched with the crown prince, I'll need a good reason to avoid it. She thought about the best-case scenario, changing her father's mind. I need to come up with an excuse to avoid meeting the crown prince. I need a plan, she resolved as she left the study. And I can't let him find out that I already know about his plans for me. Arriving back in her room, Juvelian was startled to find it empty. Huh? Where did he go? Did he hide because the servants came in? She wondered, glancing around the room. I'm back. Are you here? She called out as she opened her closet and searched the room. But there was no sign of him. What? Where did he go? She thought, feeling overwhelmed. She sank into her chair, exhausted. A letter caught her attention. A letter? She picked it up and saw that it was from Max. In the letter, he told her not to look for him, that he'd return when the time was right. What? She thought. Even a cat could write better than this. I never asked him to come back. Why is it so sudden? Her expression softened slightly and her gaze turned sad. He could have at least said goodbye in person. That night, as Max rode through the forest in haste, his mind was preoccupied. I wonder if she read the letter. Why did I even write that? He thought. If she hadn't come looking for me, I might have just stayed there as if nothing was wrong. Reaching the peak of the mountain, Max halted his horse, casting a last glance at the town below. Prince? The messenger called, looking confused. We'll take a shortcut. Let's head back for now, Max declared, turning his horse around. The next morning, Juvelian woke up later than usual. She felt confused at first, wondering why Max hadn't woken her, but then she remembered he was gone. I wonder if he found a place to stay, she thought, glancing at the letter he had left behind. Wait, why am I worrying about him right now? My own problem is much more urgent. With a sudden resolve, she jumped up from her chair. But I basically just fell asleep after thinking about it all last night. I can't come up with any good ideas, she thought, feeling a sense of defeat. Her father's present and the pendant on the table caught her eye. I need to return this too, she thought, feeling overwhelmed. There's so much to do. Something new comes up every day. Juvelian sighed as she stared out the window while her maids cleaned her room. Lady Juvelian's been acting strangely lately, hasn't she? One of the maids whispered. She used to move around freely, but now she barely leaves her room, another maid responded. I feel like it's because the Duke isn't here, the first maid whispered. Marilyn watched Juvelian from a distance, feeling a sense of sadness. She looks more out of it than usual today, she thought. Marilyn hesitated, then approached Juvelian. My lady, the weather's lovely today, she said softly. Why don't you take a walk? You'll feel much better after some fresh air. Juvelian looked up at her. Really? I guess staying inside all the time does feel a bit suffocating. Marilyn's eyes filled with tears. She recalled how, as a little girl, Juvelian had cried over being alone in the mansion. She had been difficult, even rude at times, but she always hated being by herself. Marilyn quickly hugged her. I'll always stay by your side, my lady, she said tearfully. Okay, thanks, Juvelian replied, stunned. Later that afternoon, Juvelian sat outside as Marilyn prepared tea. Ah, your favorite strawberry cake is missing, Marilyn exclaimed. I'll make some right away. Juvelian smiled faintly as Marilyn hurried off. Maybe it's for the best. I need some time to think. I have to deal with the pendant and the suitor problem before father returns. I need a plan before anything else comes up, she thought, though confusion lingered. How am I supposed to do that? Suddenly, footsteps approached from behind. It was her father. He walked with a somber expression, and when he looked up at her, she froze. Father? Juvelian asked, standing quickly. Wait, what? Why is he here already? She had thought his return would be much later. Derek had even said that the Duke wouldn't return for a while. Welcome home, father, she said, almost trembling. You're back earlier than I expected. Derek, she thought in a panic. I guess the training finished early. You must be tired. I'll call Marilyn to draw a bath. If you haven't had lunch, we could eat together, she said all at once, her voice tense. Wait, eat with father? What am I even saying? She thought, feeling embarrassed. Legis looked at her calmly, his voice steady. From now on, I'll never let you be alone. Juvelian's eyes widened in surprise. Her cheeks flushed as she gazed at him softly, unsure how to respond. Why is he acting like this? Juvelian thought, looking dazed at her father's flushed expression. I rushed out of the palace, so I didn't get to eat. Have you had dinner, Juvelian? He asked. No, not yet, she replied calmly. You need to take care of yourself, even if you're on your own. You'll collapse again if you keep skipping meals, he said. Right, she thought. If I collapse, he won't be able to marry me to the crown prince. He must want me to stay healthy for that reason. Her gaze turned sad. Never collapse again, Legis said, his expression serious. I'm too scared to say I'm sick ever again, Juvelian thought, a shiver running down her spine. Her father stepped closer. Let's go eat, he said softly, taking her hand. Huh? Her thoughts paused. Father's holding my hand? She couldn't help but recall the past when she had pleaded as he dragged her away, expecting kindness from father. I feel so foolish, she thought, her heart heavy. I would have followed him no matter what, trying to make him love me. But now it's meaningless. They ate in silence. This is so awkward. To think we're having dinner together right after he returned from the palace, Juvelian reflected. I heard you'll be going to a party next week, Legis spoke up, causing Juvelian to pause her eating. I knew this was coming, she thought. Yes, I was invited to Earl Arlo's daughter, Rosemary's birthday party, she answered. Do you have a partner? He asked, causing her to flinch. I haven't found one yet, she replied, trying to stay calm. What if he uses this as an excuse to set me up for marriage? Her hand clenched in her lap. I did get some letters asking to be my partner. The people who requested to be my partner are all incredible. They're all such amazing people. I'm having a hard time deciding, she said, smiling, but Legis still stared at her. I see, he replied softly, sipping his drink. Did it work? She wondered, noticing his calm gaze. I need to eat quickly and go through those letters, she thought, rushing through her meal. The Duke watched her quietly, not saying a word. Later, in her room, Juvelian sat surrounded by a pile of letters. Wow, Marilyn! I didn't expect this many people to ask to be my partner, Juvelian said, taking one of the letters. These are only the best ones, Marilyn replied, causing Juvelian to flinch. The first letter read, famous for his exceptional swordplay and manners, the Imperial Knight, Sir Boromir. Renowned for his beauty and wit, Sir Edmund, Earl Rowain's son. Moving on to the next letter. A candidate for the next Minister of Foreign Affairs was Crocus's son, Sir Ronald, she continued. I didn't really mean it when I said that to father, Juvelian thought. But now that I look at these proposals, they really aren't bad. It's ironic, but I guess father's reputation has worked out after all. She sat back, thinking. Who should I choose? Marilyn, it's getting late, so send this letter tomorrow, she instructed after making her choice. Yes, my lady, Marilyn replied softly, leaving the room with the letter. As Marilyn stepped out, she was met by Legis's cold gaze, causing her to flinch. If you have business with the lady, I can pass on your message, Marilyn offered. No, it's fine, Legis replied, his gaze lingering on the letter in her hand. Has she decided on her partner for the party? Ah, yes. She chose Earl Rowain's son, Sir Edmund, to be her partner, Marilyn answered softly. And how is his reputation? The Duke asked, his tone cold. He's famous for being extremely good-looking, Marilyn replied, flushed with embarrassment. Good-looking, Legis thought, a twitch passing across his face. Just imagine the young lady and him together. Isn't it fabulous? Marilyn said, lost in her thoughts. She looked up, but the hallway was empty. My lord, she called softly. That night, at Earl Rowain's residence, Edmund sat nervously, his hands trembling as he picked up his tea. What is he doing here? Edmund thought, his fear rising as he watched Legis glare at him over the rim of his cup. My lord, may I ask why you came here in the middle of the night? Edmund asked, breaking the silence. Legis's glare intensified, and Edmund's anxiety grew, his body starting to sweat. Juvelian, Legis thought, remembering her words about the kind of partner she wanted. I agree, he thought coldly. Edmund Anshin Rowain, Legis called, pulling off his glasses. Yes? Edmund asked, his voice shaky. You are unqualified, Legis said, rising from his seat. His voice was cold as he looked down at Edmund. The tone calm and straightforward without exaggeration. The next day, Juvelian was in her room reading when Marilyn entered. My lady, the item you ordered from Fyodor's workshop has arrived, she said, bringing in a box. Ah, that's a relief. I was worried it wouldn't arrive in time for Rose's birthday, Juvelian replied, taking the present. As she opened it, she noticed a small message accompanying it, along with a second, unexpected gift. Wait, why is there another one? She thought, surprised. Her maids gasped when they saw the additional gift. My lady, what are these? I've never seen anything like it, they exclaimed, looking intrigued. As expected of Ian, everyone's fascinated by it already, Juvelian thought. I'll show you how to use it soon, she said, closing the present. Just then, a knock came at the door. My lady, it's Derek, came the butler's voice. What is it? Juvelian called out. Sir Rowain has visited the residence. He says he is here to give you a reply to your letter, Derek responded. He came here in person to do that, Juvelian thought. Right, if I'm going to be his partner, it might be a good idea to get closer to him in advance. Understood. I'll get ready and go down, she replied. Soon, Juvelian found herself standing before Edmund. It's been a while, Lady Floyan, he greeted. Welcome, Sir Rowain, Juvelian greeted politely. The reception room is this way, my lord, Marilyn announced, looking a bit flustered as she ushered them along. He's not as handsome as Mikhail, but he really is good-looking, just as the rumors say, Juvelian thought as they walked. Come to think of it, Father's student was rude, but he was good-looking too. I hope he's not skipping his meals, she thought, briefly remembering Max's face. My lady, Rowain called, pulling her from her thoughts. Oops, I forgot we were talking, Juvelian thought, quickly refocusing. My lady, please allow me to explain the reason for my visit, Rowain said, suddenly kneeling before her, causing her to startle. Forgive me, my lady, he added, bowing his head. What's going on, Sir Rowain? Juvelian asked, surprised by his behavior. I thought you already had a partner, so I accepted another lady as my partner, he said, stunning her. What? You thought I already had a partner? What do you mean? She asked, stepping closer to him. Don't you know the rumors that are spreading throughout society? He asked. There are rumors that you are currently seeing someone. That's why I was so surprised to receive a letter from you, he explained. What? A shut-in like me? Dating someone? Juvelian thought, tensing. I can't believe a ridiculous rumor like that is spreading. Don't tell me someone saw Father's student come in through my window. She paused, then added, I need to stay calm. That's absurd. I've been recuperating at home this whole time, and I have witnesses, she said firmly. So the rumors aren't true? Rowain asked, looking up at her. Forgive me, he said again. It's fine. I can just find another partner. Please get up now, Juvelian replied, turning away from him. At least I know about this rumor now. When I find whoever started it, she thought, walking away. Her thoughts spiraled, but she was interrupted by Rowain, who stood up, his face brightening. Ah! Are you an angel? Forgiving my impertinence just like that. If I didn't know I was unqualified, I would have chased you to the ends of the earth, he said, a tear falling from his eye. Unqualified? Juvelian thought, looking perplexed. My lady, if it's okay with you, I would love to have dinner with you, Rowain said, offering her a rose, causing Juvelian to flinch. Meanwhile, in the room behind Juvelian, Legis stood by the window, his glare intense. Rowain noticed him, and his spine stiffened with fear. Forgive me, I think I should go home now, Rowain exclaimed, quickly backing away. What's wrong with him? Juvelian wondered, unsure about his sudden shift in behavior, watching him leave in a hurry. At Salon Bloom's, a noble's mask party was underway. Max was present, unnoticed by others, as he wore a mask. Everyone is curious about how Earl Arlo's residence will be decorated this time, one lady said. It had splendid red roses last year, so who knows what they'll have this year, another lady added. Personally, I'm more interested in who Lady Floyan will go to the ball with, the first lady said, causing Max to pause as he sipped his drink. The real reason there are so many people attending is because of Lady Floyan. Do you know who that troublemaker picked after dumping Sir Hessen? The lady whispered. I heard she's seeing someone, but I don't know who it is, replied the second lady. Ah, perhaps it's someone she can't show off to anyone. Dear me, who Who in the world could that be? The ladies wondered. Max, feeling his anger rise, smashed his glass against the floor, drawing attention. Is spreading those false rumors that satisfying? He asked, glaring at the lady who had started the gossip. I beg your pardon, there was a witness, the lady exclaimed defensively. So, did you see it for yourself? Max asked, his voice sharp, as he walked closer to her. Even if I didn't see it myself, it's because of her past behavior that these rumors are spreading, she defended herself. She's right, her friends added. Then can you say that in front of Lady Floyan? Max asked, his tone cold, causing the ladies to fall silent. Damn fools, he muttered as he left the scene. Sharing this kind of thing with each other. How sickening, he thought, frowning. Why do I feel so annoyed?
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the recap, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more manhwa content. See you in the next one.